Hi everyone, I'm Kelly Oram, young adult author, and I'm really excited to be here today to share a little bit of my new book with you, Cinder and Ella. And I love this book because I've always loved Cinderella. It's my favorite fairy tale ever, and I've always wanted to write it. As soon as I started writing novels, I knew that someday I would write my own version. This one happens to be a contemporary retelling, so it's, set in modern day. There's no fantasy. So instead of a prince, I have a Hollywood actor, and there we go. I can't do this. I seriously cannot do this. Okay, I'm in front of a camera for the first time, and I hate it, and I probably look terrible, and I can't sit still. But hey, I'm doing this for you guys. I love to watch my favorite authors when they do readings or go and see them in person. It kind of helps me kind of get to know a little bit who they are. So I thought today I'd share a little bit of myself with you. So I am at home in my office, and I'm going to read a little bit from the book so you guys can kind of get a feel for it. And not a professional reader, so when I screw it up, bear with me. And also there's a little bit of Spanish in there, and I don't speak Spanish, so when I butcher it, forgive me. So here we go. Prologue. The problem with fairy tales is that most of them begin with tragedy. I understand the reasoning behind it. No one likes a pampered heroine. A great character needs trials to overcome, experiences to give them depth, to make them vulnerable, relatable, and likable. Good characters need hardships to make them strong. The idea makes sense, but it still sucks if you're the heroine. My life had never been much like a fairy tale. I'd had no magical wishes come true, but no real tragedy either. My dad had an affair and left Mama and me when I was 8, but other than that, I'd had it pretty good. I was sort of pretty, long wavy black hair and smooth golden brown skin, thanks to the Chilean heritage on my mother's side. But I have my dad's big bright blue eyes. I'm sort of smart, mostly A's without ever having to study much, and I'm sort of popular. Not exactly the prom queen, but never without my friends or a date on Saturday night either. I may have grown up without a father, but my mom was my best friend, and that was good enough for me. Life in general was good enough. Then, last November, my mom decided to surprise me with a weekend ski trip to Vermont for my birthday, and I got my first real dose of character-building tragedy. I booked us the full spa package so that we can thaw in the jacuzzi and get massages when we're sore from skiing all day, Mama confessed, as we left the city of Boston behind us for the next 4 days. Wow, Mama, not that I'm not grateful, but can we afford that? Mama laughed at me. I loved the sound of her laugh. It was a light, fluttery sound that made me feel as if I could float away on it. She always laughed. She was the most exuberant person I'd ever known. For her, life just couldn't get any better. Listen to you, Ella. You're turning 18, not 40. I grinned. Like you are next month? Caliente, that is our secret. If anyone asks, I will be 39 for the rest of my life. Sure you will. Wait, are those crow's feet? Elamara Valentina Rodriguez, my mother gasped. These are smile lines, and I am extremely proud of them. She looked at me, and her bright eyes crinkled into smile lines around the edges. With you as a daughter, I have had to work very hard to get these instead of gray hair. Snorting, I picked up my phone, which was dinging instant messages at me. You be nice to your mama, or I will embarrass you horribly in front of all the cute boys this weekend. I'd had a witty retort ready, but forgot it when I saw the message on my phone. Cinder 458. Your blogiversary's coming up, right? Cinder 458, or just Cinder to me, is my best friend in the whole world besides my mom, even though I've never met him. I've never even spoken to him on the phone. We've been emailing nonstop since he stumbled across my blog, Elamara's Words of Wisdom, about 2 years ago. My blog is a book and movie review blog. I started it when I was 15, and my third blogiversary was indeed coming up soon. The name Elamara is in honor of my favorite character in my favorite book series, The Cinder Chronicles. It's a fantasy series written in the 70s and has become one of the most cherished stories in modern literature. Hollywood is finally making the first book, The Druid Prince, into a movie. Elamara is also my name. My mother read the books when she was a girl and loved them so much that she named me after the mysterious druid priestess. I was proud of the name and of my mom for loving Elamara best, instead of just liking the warrior Princess Ratana like everyone else. Elamara was a much better character. Cinder is obviously a fan of the series too. It was the name Elamara, and my post on why she was the most underappreciated character in the book, that drew Cinder to my blog in the first place. He loves the books as much as I do, so I liked him instantly, even if he was writing to argue that Princess Ratana was better suited for Prince Cinder. He's disagreed with most of my reviews ever since. Ella, the real hero. Do all those Hollywood friends of yours know you use words like blogiversary? Cinder 458. Of course not. I need your address. Got you a blogiversary present. Cinder got me a gift? My heart flipped. Not that I was in love with my internet best friend or anything. That would be utterly ridiculous. The boy was cocky and stubborn and argued with everything I said just to be infuriating. He also had lots of money, dated models, which meant he had to be hot, and was a closet book nerd. Funny, rich, hot, confident book lover. Definitely not my type. Nope, not at all. Yeah, okay, fine, so he wasn't my type by default because he lived in California and I lived in Massachusetts. Whatever. Cinder 458. Hello? Ella? Address? Ella, the real hero. I don't give out my address to creepy internet stalkers. Cinder 458. I guess you don't want this autographed first edition hardback of the Druid Prince then. Shame. I had it signed to Elamara when I met LP Morgan at FantasyCon last week, so I can't try to impress any other girls with it. I didn't realize I was squealing until the car swerved. Por el amor de todo lo sagrado, Elamara, do not scare your poor mama like that. We are in the middle of a snowstorm. The roads are dangerous enough without you screaming like a banshee. Sorry, Mama, but Cinder said, Híjole, muñeca. Not that boy again. I recognized the tired voice. I was about to get one of my mother's favorite lectures. You do realize he's a complete stranger, right? I shook my head. He's not. I know him better than anyone. You've never met him in person. For all you know, everything he says could be lies. I'll be the first to admit I'd wondered that before because Cinder's life sounded a bit like a rock star's. But I'd known him long enough now that I believed he wasn't a liar. I really don't think so, Mama. It's possible he embellishes a little, but who doesn't? And what does it matter? He's just an internet friend. He lives in California. Exactly. So why do you waste so much time with him? Because I like him. I can talk to him. He's my best friend. Mama sighed again, but she smiled at me and her voice softened. I just worry that you'll fall for him, muñeca, and then what? That was a good question. Which is exactly why Cinder was not my type. Not my type. Not my type. Cinder 458. Address. Noun. The location at which particular organization or person may be found or reached, or mailed amazing presents. Ella 458. Did your car tell you that? Cinder drives a Ferrari 458. He told me that once when I asked what the numbers in his screen name meant. I looked the car up. It costs more than my mom makes in 5 years. I like to give him a hard time about his overindulgent ways. And yes, the car actually does talk to him. Cinder 458. Not driving, so my phone did. Address, woman, now! Or I won't tell you who signed on to play Cinder in the movie. I almost shrieked again. The movie was greenlighted, but the cast hadn't been announced. Cinder's dad is some big shot in the movie industry, so Cinder always knows stuff beforehand. Ella, the real hero. No way! Tell me! I'm dying! I never got to find out which actor was going to immortalize one of the most beloved characters of all time, because a logging truck hit a patch of black ice and slid across the 2-lane highway straight into Mama and me. I'd been looking down at my phone when it happened, and I never saw it coming. I just remember hearing my mother scream and being thrown against my seatbelt as an airbag exploded in my face. There was a quick moment of pain so intense it literally took my breath away, and then there was nothing else. I woke up 3 weeks later in a burn center in Boston when the doctors brought me out of a medically induced coma. I had 2nd and 3rd degree burns covering 70% of my body. My mother was dead. Chapter 1. I can't remember many specific details of the accident, but the fear I felt that day is crystal clear in my memory. I have nightmares all the time. They're always the same, a few blurry images and a mesh of chaotic sounds, but I'm paralyzed with terror so strong I can't breathe until I wake up screaming. The dread itself is the main focus of the dream. If the sun weren't blaring so rudely into my face, and my body didn't ache from the 5.5-hour flight from Boston, I'd have thought I was back in my dream. I was that terrified as I sat in the driveway looking at what was to be my new home. So far, I'd only seen the view from the car between the airport and my father's house up in the winding hills above Los Angeles. It was enough to know that LA was nothing like Boston, despite what the traffic on the freeway would have me believe. I wished it were only the change of scenery that I was scared of. I spent 8 weeks in intensive care and was then in a rehab center for another 6 months. 8 months of hospitalization total, and now I was being released into the care of the man who'd walked out of my life 10 years ago. Him and the woman he'd left me for, along with the 2 daughters he'd replaced me with. I should warn you that Jennifer has probably cooked up some sort of welcome home surprise. Not a party, I gasped, my terror exploding into something that might finally kill me. I never thought I'd live through a hell most people can't even imagine, only to be offed on my first day out of the hospital by a group of random strangers wanting to welcome me home. No, of course not, my father assured me. Nothing like that. Your new rehabilitation team stopped by last week and prepped the whole family. Jennifer knows meeting a lot of new people will be too overwhelming at first. I'm sure it will be just her and the girls, but there's probably a nice dinner waiting for you, along with welcoming gifts and possibly decorations. She's very excited to meet you. I couldn't say the same. When I didn't respond, my dad glanced at me with that look of helplessness he'd been watching me with since I came out of my coma and found him sitting beside my hospital bed. Cannot read. It's a look that is 70% pity, 20% fear, and 10% awkwardness. It's as if he has no clue what to say or how to act with me, probably because he hasn't seen or talked to me since I was 8. He cleared his throat and said, "You ready, kiddo?" I would never be ready. "Please don't call me that," I whispered, working hard to speak around the lump suddenly clogging my throat. He blew out a long puff of air and tried to smile. Too old for that now? Something like that. In truth, I hated the nickname because it reminded me of Mama. She always called me her little muñeca, or baby doll. When I was about 6, Dad started calling me kiddo. He said it was because I needed an American nickname too, but I think it was just because he'd been jealous of the relationship I had with Mama even back then. "Sorry," Dad said. "It's fine." I opened the car door before the awkwardness choked us to death. Dad came around the car to help me get out, but I brushed him off. "I'm supposed to do it." "Right, sorry. Here." As I moved my legs out one at a time, he handed me my cane and waited as I slowly pulled myself to a stand. "Hi, sweetheart." My kitty's saying hi. It took effort and it wasn't pretty, but I could finally walk on my own again. I was proud of that. The doctors hadn't always thought it would be possible, but I pushed through the pain and regained a lot of my range of movement. The scars were bad enough. "Oh, you killed it, Mr. Darcy!" Sorry. Where was I? It took effort and it wasn't pretty, but I could finally walk on my own again. I was proud of that. The doctors hadn't always thought it would be possible, but I pushed through the pain and regained a lot of my range of movement. The scars were bad enough. I didn't want to be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of my life, too. I was glad for the slow walk up the driveway. It gave me the time I needed to brace myself for what waited inside. Dad waved a hand at the house in front of us. I know it doesn't look like much from the front, but it's bigger than it appears, and the view from the back is spectacular. Did it look like much? What did he expect me to think of the 2-story postmodern multi-million-dollar house in front of me? He'd seen the small 2-bedroom apartment Mama and I lived in back in Boston. He'd been the one to clear it out after Mama's funeral. Not knowing what to say, I just shrugged. "We had your room set up on the ground floor so that you won't have to use the stairs except to get to the main family room, which is only down a short flight of steps. You also have your own bathroom, and we've had it converted so that it's now handicap accessible. Everything should be all ready for you, but if it proves that the house doesn't work, Jennifer and I have already talked about finding something new. Maybe down the hill in Bel Air where we can get a nice ranch style. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath in an attempt to not glare or say something rude. He spoke as if I'd be here forever, but I was so gone as soon as I was allowed. I had a moment of weakness during a low point in my rehabilitation, and I tried to take my own life. I'd been in the hospital for 3 months at the time, with no end in sight. I could still hardly move. I'd just had my 17th surgery. I was told I'd never walk again. I missed my mother, and I was in so much physical pain that I just wanted it all to end. Nobody blamed me for my actions, but now nobody believed that I wasn't a threat to myself anymore. I'd planned to stay in Boston, finish the school I'd missed online, and then go to Boston University when I was ready. I was 18 and had the money saved, but when my father realized what I was planning, he had me legally declared mentally incompetent and forced me to come to California with him. It wasn't easy for me to be civil with the man. "I'm sure the house is fine," I grumbled. "Can we please just get this over with so I can go to bed? I'm exhausted and I really hurt after traveling all day." I felt bad for being short with him when I saw disappointment flash in his eyes. I think he'd been hoping to impress me. But he didn't understand that I'd never needed a lot of money. He didn't understand that I'd never had a lot of money and that I'd never needed it. I was content with the humble lifestyle I had with Mama. I never even used the checks he sent every month. Mama had been putting them in a bank account for years. I had enough money in there to pay for college, another reason I would have been fine on my own. "Sure, honey." He paused and winced. "Sorry. I suppose that name is off the approved nicknames list too, huh?" I grimaced. "How about we just stick with Ella?" Inside, the house was as immaculate as the burn center. It probably had alarms that went off if a speck of dust landed anywhere. My rehab team would be thrilled. The place was posh. My rehab team would be thrilled. The place was posh and the furniture all looked highly uncomfortable. There was no way this house would ever feel like home. The new Mrs. Coleman stood in an enormous kitchen, setting a silver platter of fruit and dip on a granite countertop when we came around the corner. I think the tray might have been actual silver. When she noticed us, her entire face lit up in the hugest, brightest smile I'd ever seen on anyone. "Elamara, welcome to our home, sweetie." Jennifer Coleman had to be one of the most beautiful women in all of Los Angeles. Hair as golden as the sun, eyes as blue as the sky, and lashes that reach all the way to the moon. Her legs were long, her waist was tiny, and her giant boobs were perfectly round and perky. Bombshell was the only word that came to mind. I don't know why I found her beauty surprising. I knew she was a professional model. Print and commercials, not fashion. She did things like shampoo and skin cream commercials, so she actually looked healthy and not just skinnier than a crack addict. Judging from the size of her house, she must have done pretty well for herself, because my dad may have been a big-shot lawyer, but U.S. attorneys didn't have outrageous salaries. Back when he lived with us, we had a moderate house in the suburbs, but we certainly weren't driving Mercedes and living up on a hill in a house that had its own gate. Jennifer stepped forward and gave me a careful hug, kissing the air next to my cheek. "We're so excited that we finally get to have you here with us. Rich has been telling us so much about you for so long. I feel like you're already part of the family. It must be a relief to be in a real home again." Actually, leaving the rehab center was one of the scariest things I'd ever had to do. And being here was the opposite of relief. But of course I didn't say that. I tried to think of something that was true and not too insulting. "It's a relief to be off the plane." Jennifer's smile turned sympathetic. "You must be so tired, you poor thing." I swallowed back annoyance and forced a smile. I hate people's pity as much as I hate their stares, if not more. Before I had to figure out something to say, my 2 new stepsisters came bursting through the front door. "Girls, you're late!" Jennifer sounded irritated, but she plastered that big phony smile back on her face. "Look who's home!" The 2 sisters slammed into each other as they came to an abrupt halt. They were twins. Not identical, I didn't think, but they looked so similar that if not for the haircuts, I bet I'd still mix them up. I knew from pictures Dad had showed me that Juliet was the one with the long blonde locks that fell in silky waves halfway down her back, while Anastasia had a sleek angled bob that swept across her face and came to a sharp stop at her chin. It was so perfectly coiffed that she looked as if she'd stepped straight out of a hairstyle magazine. Both girls were as gorgeous as their mother, same blonde hair, blue eyes, and perfect figures. And they were both so tall. I'm a modest 5'6", and they both towered over me. Of course, they were both wearing heels that gave them at least 4 extra inches, but I bet they were still both pushing 5'10" without the shoes. They were over a year younger than me, but could easily pass for 21. Not bothering with any kind of hello, Anastasia lifted a hand to her chest. "Oh man, I am so glad your face isn't messed up." Juliet nodded, eyes wide. "Totally. We looked up pictures online of burn victims, and like all of them had these hideous scars on their faces. It was so gross." My dad and Jennifer let out matching nervous laughs and went to stand by the twins. "Girls," Jennifer admonished mildly, "it's not polite to talk about people's deformities." I flinched at the term. Was that what she thought of me? That I was deformed? My face may have been lucky, but my shoulder, down the right half of my body, and everything from below the waist was covered with thick, raised pink scars that popped in contrast to my naturally tanned skin. My dad pulled both girls close to his sides, tucking one into each arm. In their heels, they stood almost at the same height as his 6'1". I remembered him being a decent-looking man, but he was really quite handsome standing next to his picture-perfect family. He still had a full head of thick brown hair, and of course my bright blue eyes. "Honey, these are my daughters, Anastasia and Juliet. Girls, this is your new stepsister, Elamara." He grinned proudly, flashing his perfect lawyer smile as he squeezed both girls. The creases around his eyes hurt my heart. Smile lines. He'd obviously spent his life laughing a lot. I also noticed the fact that he'd called the twins his daughters, not stepdaughters. Ignoring my desire to curl up into a ball and cry, I lifted a hand in greeting. "It's just Ella Rodriguez." Neither girl took my hand. "Rodriguez?" Juliet scoffed. "Shouldn't it be Coleman?" Letting my hand fall back to my side, I shrugged. "I changed it to my mother's maiden name when I was 12. "Why?" "Because I am a Rodriguez." Both my stepsisters looked as though I'd somehow offended them. I had to clench my jaw to keep from spouting obscenities at them in Spanish. My glare slid to my father. "Where's my bag? I need to take my medicine and then I need to rest. My legs feel swollen." Jennifer argued with her girls in heated whispers as my dad led me across the main floor of the house to my room. I didn't care that they were fighting about me. I was just glad to have the introductions over. Hopefully now I could avoid them as much as possible. I sat down on my hospital-style bed that would elevate at both the head and the feet and swallowed a couple of pills before I looked around my new room. The walls were a soft yellow, no doubt intentionally so because some doctor had told my father that yellow was a soothing, cheerful color. Honestly, it wasn't that bad, but the furniture was this awful frilly white set that made me feel like I was 6 years old again. It was hideous. "Do you like it?" Jennifer asked hopefully. She'd come into the room and taken her place at my dad's side. He wrapped his arm around her waist and kissed her cheek. It took some serious effort not to cringe at them. Again, I chose my words carefully. I've never had stuff this nice before. Dad picked up some kind of touchscreen remote. "You've got to see the best part." He grinned as he began pushing buttons. "I can show you how to use this later. It controls the TV, stereo, lights, fan, and windows." The windows? My windows were controlled by remote? Dad puffed his chest out, and with one last tap on the screen, the floor-to-ceiling sheer white curtains along the far wall slid open, revealing an entire wall of windows with a sliding door in the middle. Then, with another touch of a button, the sunshades on each window rose up, letting a flood of light engulf the room. Dad opened the door and stepped out into the sunset onto a wooden balcony that overlooked the whole city of Los Angeles as far as the eye could see. Beyond the balcony, the ground dropped off out of sight. Apparently the house was on the side of a cliff. "You have the best view in the house. You'll have to come out here and look at all the lights after dark. It's really something to see." Given California's reputation for earthquakes, I found the prospect of standing on that balcony a bit disturbing. Dad came back in, and once the sunshades and curtains were all back in place, he turned to me with a hopeful expression. He caught me eyeing the laptop on the desk with trepidation. It was silver and looked as thin as a pancake. I'd always wanted one of those, but somehow it didn't seem so appealing anymore. Dad walked over and flipped the laptop open. I hope you don't mind the change. The computer you had in your apartment was so ancient. I thought you'd like this better. I had someone back up the hard drive before I got rid of it. I also got you a new phone since yours burned. He picked up what looked like an iPhone in a hot pink case and handed it to me. We added you to the family plan, unlimited everything, so don't worry about calling your friends in Massachusetts. It's not a problem at all. I cringed. I hadn't contacted any of my friends since the accident. By the time I was capable of calling people, so much time had passed that I figured everyone had already moved on. I was going home with my dad and wouldn't be going back, so I never saw the point in trying to keep in touch. Now that I was thousands of miles away, I really didn't see the point. My dad must have realized this too, because he forced a brittle smile and rubbed the back of his neck as if he were suddenly extremely uncomfortable. Thanks, I said. So, where are all my things? Dad's face relaxed, as if I'd just asked an easy question on a much safer topic. Everything from your room, except for the furniture, obviously, is packed in boxes in your closet. In my closet? How big is the closet? Jennifer found this funny. Not as big as mine, but I doubt you have the shoe problem that I do. I didn't want to tell her that my mother and I both had a shoe problem. We had the same size feet, and must have had a truckload of shoes between us. Not that I'd be wearing any of them ever again. No open-toed sandals or heels of any kind for me now. Only special shoes that therapeutically support my burned feet and scream Grandma. They'd fixed my hand, giving me enough movement back that I was able to write again, sort of. I was still working on making my handwriting legible, but they couldn't entirely save my toes. We left everything in boxes because we thought you'd want to unpack and arrange things yourself, Dad said. But if you'd like help, we'll be happy to do whatever you need. No, I can manage. What about Mom's stuff and the rest of the apartment? I packed everything that looks significant, pictures and things, and some of your mom's belongings that I thought you might want to keep. There wasn't much, just a couple of boxes worth. They're with your things. Everything else I got rid of. What about the books? My heart started pounding in my chest. My bookshelves were not in this room, and I seriously doubted they were in the closet. What did you do with all of my books? All those books in the living room? I donated them. You what? My dad flinched when I yelled, and got that panicked expression back in his eyes. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't realize you gave away all of my books? Maybe it was a stupid thing to lose it over after all the emotional stress I'd been through that day, but I simply couldn't handle the thought of my books being gone. I'd been collecting them for years. Ever since I'd learned to read, it'd been my favorite thing to do. Mama had been giving me books for my birthday and Christmas, and sometimes simply because she felt like it. For so long, it'd become tradition. I'd gone to book signings and conventions all over the Northeast and had dozens of books signed by all of my favorite authors. Every time I'd go to Mama with that look in my eye, she'd laugh and say, "Where to this time?" At each signing, I had someone take a picture of Mama and me with the author and taped the picture to the inside of the cover with the book it went with. Now the books, the pictures, and the memories, they were all gone, just like Mama was gone. I'd never get them back, and I could never replace what I lost. It was like losing her all over again. My heart broke into a million tiny pieces, shattered beyond repair. I burst into uncontrollable sobs, rolled over on my bed, and curled up into a tight ball, wishing I could somehow block out the pain. I'm sorry, Elamara. I had no idea. You weren't awake to ask. I can get you new books, though. We'll go this week and you can get whatever you'd like. The thought of him trying to replace that collection revolted me to my core. You don't understand, I screamed. Please just go away. I never heard the door click shut, but no one bothered me after that until the next morning. I cried for hours until I passed out from exhaustion. Okay, so I told you, not good at this. But hopefully you stuck around, hopefully you enjoyed it, hopefully hopefully the preview kind of got you excited for the book. This was kind of Elamara's intro. I didn't get to the introduction for Brian, which is my Prince Charming and Hollywood actor. He does get a few chapters with his own perspective, so you'll get a little bit of his thoughts, and he has kind of his own story going on at the same time as Elamara. So when you get a little bit further into the book, you'll kind of get you'll get two different stories. You'll get kind of what she's going through and what he's going through, and then you'll watch as the two worlds collide. And I love what I do, and I love being able to bring the stories to you, and hopefully you love them just as much. So thanks, and I will see you later. Bye.